All right, there we go. All right, we're looking at Proverbs chapters 18, 19, and 20 this morning. My twin brother Frank will be teaching next week. Beth and I are leaving on Thursday to go to Ohio. We've got relatives that we haven't seen in about 4 or 5 years, and then I'm speaking at a men's gathering on Saturday. From what I hear, about 40% of the men that are going to be there are not believers. And about 40% are non-committed guys who say they're believers, and about 20% guys that are pretty solid. So I like those numbers. And
where is this again?
in Canton, Ohio, I'm speaking at a church camp outside of Canton. It's called Guys, Guns, and Grub. So they're going to do a lot of shooting in the morning and then come back and have a big lunch, and then I speak to them. I'm not going to the shooting part because I just waste ammunition for me trying to shoot anything that's flying. My idea of a good dove hunt is sit under a tree and hide, and when they come and light on the branches, shoot them off the branches. Quality, yeah.
It's against the law.
Yeah. All right. Chapter 18. Yeah. Chapter 18. I'm sorry, before we do 18, I had just a couple of notes from 17, and I called it flipping. Flipping, flipping. And I think you'll see what I mean when we go back to 17 verses 13 to 15. And it's exactly what happens today. Whoever rewards evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. The beginning of strife is like releasing water. Therefore, stop contention before it starts. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the just, both of them alike are an abomination to the Lord. And there's that abomination word before that Beth was sharing with us the meaning of it. And can you give that to us in a couple words again?
Anything that breaks or distracts from the worship of God. If it breaks or distracts from the worship of God.
Okay. So it's contrary. Anything that comes in the way of worship, anything that is not worshipful, and that certainly fits here. But then look also at verse 26, same chapter. To punish the righteous is not good, nor to strike princes for their uprightness. Flipping. We're going to get a little bit ahead, but it's okay. I connected this with chapter 22, verse 16. He who oppresses the poor increases his riches, to increase his riches, and he who gives to the rich will surely come to poverty. It's interesting that this, almost in the same format that Jesus says, if you would be exalted, then humble yourself. Okay? The evil one flips that, takes that same principle and says, oppress the poor. Okay? Build up the rich. By the way, I put by verse 16 that is definitely a liberal. I did put the word Democrat strategy beside that because nowadays that's their philosophy. Okay, they end up oppressing the poor in the name of the rights of a woman. We're going to oppress 75% of the population where crisis centers are put, not crisis pregnancy centers. I'm talking abortion clinics are put in areas of about 75% minorities. Okay, if you really love and want to help any group of people, then you don't plant a murder mill in the middle of them and say, oh, well, and we'll help you there. And anybody who even prays on the sidewalk in front of it or across the street from it, or anybody who says anything about it, we're going to condemn them. We're going to put them in jail. Okay, that's what happens, and that's exactly what this flipping is about. Look at verses 22 and 23 in the same chapter. Do not rob the poor because he is poor, nor oppress the afflicted at the gate, for the Lord will plead their cause and plunder the soul of those who plunder them. And chapter 24, verses 23 to 25. It is not good to show partiality in judgment. He who says to the wicked, you are righteous, him the people will curse. Nations will abhor him. But those who rebuke the wicked will have delight, and a good blessing will come upon them. In the New Testament, Paul talks about calling good evil and evil good, and that's the way that the culture was going in the first century. Well, it sure isn't any better now. I mean, it's going the same way now. Good is rewarded with punishment, and evil is rewarded with good things and praise. And truth is a scarce commodity. If there's ever anything we could teach our kids and our grandkids now and practice cautiously ourselves, it is truthfulness. Okay, back in chapter 18. Share with the class what you've written down about chapter 18, from chapter 18.
Just one of my favorite verses is the Lord is a strong tower, the righteous run into it and they are safe. I
Verse 10.
quote that many times. It's just comforting.
Mm-hmm. His name. By the way, it's not a rabbit's foot, his name. But the evil one hates his name. And people who are bent on evil despise his name. That's why they use his name in every kind of cursing that you can hear or don't want to hear. But his name. And I taught a study one time on his names, and the question was, why so many names? Okay, answer the question, why does this says the name of the Lord singular, taking all of the names that we see in Scripture? Why so many?
Because each one describes them. They're all different attributes.
You can't do it with just one, can you?
Because he is omni, right? So
What?
God is omni, so he is all. So to describe omni, you need many names.
And we probably don't even have all of the names it could be. And how amazing it is, what a privilege that some people got to give him names. Gideon did. Gideon called him Yahweh Shalom. He built an altar and said, this is to Yahweh Shalom. Now, that's not the only time that appears in there, but it's the first time that name is in there. Can you think of somebody else who got to give him a name?
Do we not all have that privilege?
We do. We do. Yeah, absolutely we do. Hagar saw Jesus, okay? It was God. Yes, she calls him God, but she saw him, and she said, have I seen the God who sees me? And she also mentions in Genesis, she calls him the God who hears me, when he heard her son crying out in the wilderness that they were going to die. So, and how gracious that was, because the reason they were out in the wilderness was that, do you remember why they were out in the wilderness? She and Ishmael, why they were cast out in the wilderness? Ishmael was trashing Isaac. He was just throwing garbage on Isaac. And so Daddy put him out in the wilderness. Okay. Well, God said, you need to bless my people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and his descendants. But God graciously sent his son out into the wilderness to rescue a woman and her little boy who had trashed his son of promise, because God said to Abraham, Isaac is your only son, the son of promise. Even though Ishmael had been born before him, the only son of promise was Isaac. But God graciously said, Jesus, go out, and he did. He went out and rescued them from the wilderness and gave them a blessing also. Said, you're going to be a great nation. Many tribes, 12 tribes, just like the number of Jewish tribes. Okay, so the name of the Lord is a strong tower. You have more than one name. I mean, we're grandma or grandpa, you know. Your name is not NASCAR on any official record, is it? But that's what I call this man, just because of our beginnings with NASCAR. I had no idea why they used nitrogen in the tires of NASCARs. So I asked, I didn't go to my phone. I asked my friend, who I called NASCAR. People have nicknames for us, affectionate names for us. You know, I'm Uncle Fred. My nephew got really aggravated when he went to Ukraine because all the young people over there called me Uncle Fred because most of them had no men relatives that were believers. And I can't tell you how many young men I had over there say, would you be like my father? Because my father is dead. He died in unbelief. My father was a drunk and he threw me out. But, so they called me Uncle Fred. Well, when he went over there for a summer internship, he called his parents. He said, I don't like this. Everybody's calling him Uncle Fred. He's my uncle. Well, we get to share. And you're right, Beth. Each of us individually can call him by a special name because that's how personal he is to us. And he hasn't always shown himself in my lifetime the same way that he has shown himself to you. Maybe he will eventually, I don't know. But your different needs and my different needs, your different personality, my different personality are so special and personal to him that he takes it that way.
I forget where it is, but he has a name for each of us, right? Where is that?
Revelation.
Yeah.
It says that he gives us a name, he writes it in a stone. This is when we're entering into eternity from, transferring from the new creation, new heavens of the earth. The new heavens and the new earth. He writes that name in a stone, and only we and him, we're the only ones that know it. Revelation 22, I think 18 maybe.
Okay.
And since he's all knowing from the beginning of time, he already knows what that name is for each of us.
Yeah.
So it's only fitting that the other side of that relationship is reciprocity. We have a name for him.
Well, yep. A lot of discussion out of your favorite verse there, Cindy. Thank you. All right, what else do you find? I see narcissism from verses 1 to 9. I mean, all the way through it. There's a line of filth and dirt all the way through that part. But then after the end of all of that junk, you go, but the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous run to it, and they are safe. Okay, what else do you find in 18? Andy.
I can relate to verse 1, only half of it. The first part, a man who isolates himself seeks his own desire. When I left the children's home and went into the military, I wrapped myself in myself. I had nothing to do with anybody. I went wherever I went on my own. Didn't travel with anybody. And the second part doesn't apply. But that was me in my early stages until I got married. And now changed. But that first part of my into civilization, I was at home. I would wrapped myself. I was isolated. I didn't want anything to do with anybody else.
But with good reason, you had to take care of yourself. And then when you found someone else that would help take care of you, your sweet wife, wow, that was a bonus, for sure. Well, Eddie is right. A couple weeks ago, he mentioned that even in the naming of some of these characteristics of the foolish man. All of us will find something and go, "Ooh, that was me." But that's the difference between foolishness and being a fool. Okay, all of them are true as a package in the book of Proverbs of the one that God looks at and says, "This is a fool, a foolish. This is a fool." But and that's why I guess that's why they call it foolishness, because it's just when we do dumb things. Hey, watch this, that kind of stuff. Do girls ever do that? Hey, they always make fun of the guys for saying, "Hey, watch this," before we do something stupid. Do girls ever do that?
I think they do so more now, or I see more of it.
You know what?
And the videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it's less something stupid
nobody
and more
here would
something
do
mean.
that.
Yeah,
I think that's the difference. Like, especially among like teenage girls, it's like, hey, watch this, and then they're just mean, and they say something hurtful versus doing something physically stupid.
but it's a flip also for attention to do such an outrageous, dumb, stupid, brainless thing, and like you said, put it out there for everybody to see. I'm glad that most of the dumb things I've done are not recorded. If you're running for office, they better not be recorded. But okay, what else for 18?
How about verse 5? I hate to read the newspaper, but it is not good to show partiality to the guilty or denying an innocent person justice.
It's plain wicked. Now, here's interesting. That verse, and there's two other verses that I marked. I'm not sure where they are right now. They're further down the line. In the Old Testament law, if you unjustly accused somebody of doing a crime and it was proven that they were innocent, guess what? You got the punishment. If you were going after them and saying that they should get the death penalty, and you were lying about it, it came back on you. That was the righteousness of God in the Old Testament law. If you said somebody stole 5 of your cows or goats or whatever, and it was untrue, they had to give you at least twice, in some cases more than twice that many. They had to pay back to you, and then it was public. It was publicly known that they had lied. And there was, you'd think that would make people more cautious. But what are the consequences now for lying about somebody? Hardly anything.
You get to be president.
Yeah, you get to be, yeah, and if you do poorly in your job, you get promoted.
And a raise.
Isn't that, why didn't we know that? We could have been president by now.
I don't want it.
Yeah, so there's a flip too, isn't
I'll
it?
be a judge.
Okay, all right, anything else, or are we going to chapter 19? Don?
I took on the reading of Job, and I found this is kind of like a sidebar, but when you get down to the very next to last chapter, which is 41, it talks about the big creature Leviathan. Can you draw out Leviathan? What's interesting is that particular chapter describes Leviathan, a creature that we've never really seen, but God says it actually exists. I mean, all the different characteristics, but when you get down to the very last part, on earth there is not his like, a creature without fear. He sees everything that is high. He is the king over all sons of pride. Verse 12 in our chapter 18, pride leads to destruction.
Yep.
It's interesting that if you read about that creature, that's all that creature does. Everything is just about destruction and whatnot. And I highly recommend you read the book of Job. I mean, I was fascinated. some of the
You-
stuff that you actually find. in
Would you like to teach a study on Job?
Put Don down for that next.
Okay. Okay. Yep. Pride comes before destruction for sure. Okay. 19. What do you see in 19? A few weeks ago, we were reading the verses about the foolish man and how that it was that you shouldn't rebuke him, reprove him, whatever. And I said, well, what's the bottom line on these verses? And Beth McDowell said, don't waste your time. I think she and Marcia said it together. And that verse comes back up again, verse 19. A man of great wrath will suffer punishment. If you deliver him, you'll have to do it again. You know, the same old, same old. So don't waste your time.
That kind of, on chapter 18, verse 2, it says, a fool finds no pleasure in understanding, but delights in airing his own opinion.
Yeah.
I've encountered that firsthand, and you might as well shut up and go on.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna change their thought process.
One of my favorite things to tell people is, so what I understand is you only want to hear your opinion come from my mouth. Is that
I don't even say that. with
accurate?
this
Like,
one. I just nod.
Well, that's the woke philosophy now. That's the woke philosophy. Freedom of speech is going away quickly, pretty
Yeah, it
quickly. Last week when I was getting my stitches taken out, the doctor said something sort of funny. And the nurse did too, at a different time. It was almost like they were asking me if I approved of the way they were doing it. I said, why are you asking me that? And the nurse said, well, you know, I have people that say that I need to do this. You know, well, actually, it was back when they put the stitches in. The lady said, I'm gonna leave them in for about 10 days instead of 7. She said, usually the face takes about a week, but she said we had to go pretty deep, and so is that okay? I said, is that okay? Why are you asking my opinion? Well, she said, I had a man tell me the other day, no, I think you should take them out at a week. I said, yeah, and then my face puckers open and you have to redo it. I said, you know what this stuff is. And she said, and the doctor said the same thing a little bit later. You'd be surprised. We have people come in here and try and tell us how to do it. It's probably from reading on the internet, and you got to be careful of that. So you're right. Some people just want you to hear what they believe, but they just don't want you to just hear it. You want you to do it too. Okay. What else from 19?
Ooh, what you were talking about, verse 9. You about you lie about somebody in the Old Testament, they come back on you. It says a false witness will not go unpunished, and he who pours out lies will perish.
Yeah, when these things were written, those laws were still in effect. So everything that he says, that's almost something we need to make sure we think of. You know, okay, is that a promise that they'll not go unpunished now? No. As far as God's concerned, he won't miss any of those things. But those things would have been taken care of under the government of Israel at that time, according to the law of Moses. But they're not now. And it should be that in a good biblically based government like ours used to be, that a false witness would not go unpunished, and he who speaks lies shall perish. But unfortunately, it's not that way anymore. In 5 and 9 say the same thing.
Yeah, they do. I was reading that.
So I guess besides the abundance of verses about the fool, about the scorner, the unwise, I think probably if we looked at what theme comes up the most in Proverbs, second to that, the most verses would be about truth, about telling the truth. That line from the movie, I forget who it was, said to the young Navy JAG, "You can't handle the truth."
A few good
And
men.
that's the problem. What is that?
A few good men.
A few good men, yeah. And I'm not giving an opinion about either of those men either, but some people can't handle the truth, but some people can't tell the truth. I'm going to take a moment here while you're not saying anything, and I want to trace what these verses say about physical punishment for the fool. Okay? Chapter 18, verse 6. A fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calls for blows. That's called you're just asking for it. Look at chapter 19.
Mine says in his mouth invites a beating.
That's what mine says.
What does it say?
His mouth invites a beating.
Invites a beating. I like that better.
I like that.
Okay. One time when I was a deacon, that's back when Moses was born, we had this person in our congregation that was just wicked, being very abusive to the wife and all of the kids. I mean, not providing for them, physically abusive, verbally abusive, blah, blah, blah. And in the deacons meeting, we got to be gracious, I got to give him a chance. And I said, I think what we need to do is take him out back behind the school building, about 6 of us, and beat the snot out of him. That's what I think we need to do. Dr. Orler said, well, now, Fred, now you're just getting carried away, no. So he says, I'll mentor him. I said, okay. A year later, Dr. Orley came back to me. I don't know if he ever told anybody else this, but it's public now. He said, remember what you said we needed to do to that guy? I said, yeah. He says, I wish I would have listened to you. Because I could see he was making a fool of the pastor too. Pastor was graciously trying to help him, and I appreciated that. But he's going around talking about how stupid the pastor was for letting the things go on that he was doing. So many times when things happen, and I see this stuff on TV, somebody attacks somebody down, attacks a little old lady and takes her purse. I keep thinking if 4 or 5 people around had big sticks and they would just beat the snot out of that guy and then call the police. Okay, well, I got more verses to prove my point here. 19 verse 5, a false witness will not go unpunished, and he who speaks lies will not escape. Verse 9, we just talked about these 2 verses. Punishment. Verse 15, slothfulness casts one into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. Verse 19.
They go down and get food stamps.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
go to the grocery store.
Yeah, they do.
I say if you work hard, you don't qualify.
Yeah, and we got to be careful who we give things to. Verse 19, a man of great wrath will suffer punishment, for if you deliver him, you'll have to do it again. So there's the choice. Take it easy on him or punish him. And verse 25, strike a scoffer, and the simple will become wary. Reprove one who has understanding, and he will discern knowledge. There's the opposite of it. Verse 29, judgments are prepared for scoffers, and beatings for the backs of fools. Anybody else have a different translation on that one?
Penalties are prepared for mockers and beatings for the backs of fools.
Okay. And then chapter 20, verse 20. Now, this is not just, if the Bible just says something in one place, you got to be real careful, okay? Basing philosophy on that, saying, okay, this is the overwhelming truth of God. 2020 says, whoever curses his father or his mother, his lamp will be put out in deep darkness. Woo! That's pretty big. What do the other translations say?
Lamp will be snuffed out in pitch darkness.
Snuffed out. Okay, and we know what that means. Verse 29. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. 30, verse 30, 20:30. Blows that hurt cleanse away evil, as do stripes the inner depths of the heart. I put beside that the value of punishment for sin, evil, and wrong. And one more chapter, actually, well, two more. Chapter 21, verse 11. When the scoffer is punished, the simple is made wise. Verse 16. A man who wanders from the way of understanding will rest in the congregation of the dead. That's like getting snuffed out, isn't it? Beth, you have something?
I was gonna say, the one thing I like about Tennessee law that goes with this is when someone's punished, it's also for the deterrent of others to commit the same crime. And so, like for Joe, when they were considering sentencing, one of the things that I researched and put forward to the prosecutor was how his family sat around like fools saying it's not a big deal. So they should increase his punishment to be a deterrent to those that were surrounding him, saying that it was okay. And that was one of the things that increased and made his sentence so severe, was, that he was surrounded by fools. And I think that's a lot of biblical support here, that, part of it is for others to see, to learn, and be deterred from doing awful, horrible things to people. It's better to learn from observation. And so, I think if we did have some more firm laws and more firm discipline for people, it would not only be good for them, but for those around them. When my kids get in trouble, if it's something that they've done publicly and so then they get disciplined, I will look at their siblings and be like, this is your moment to learn. Don't do dumb, because it hurts. Don't wait for me to have to come and you be in trouble too. But learn from what your siblings, and I mean that's how I learned a lot as a kid. You learn what to do or what not to do.
Strike the scorner and the simple will beware.
Right.
Okay, there's a warning there. Chapter 21, 18 and 25. The wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the unfaithful the upright. Verse 25, the desire of the slothful kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. And 22:15, foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction will drive it far from him. Okay, again, we've got to be careful, especially in this day, even saying the things that I've said on here, because people talk about abuse. You know how I feel about abuse. There is no room in my heart for grace and mercy when people are abusing, not just physically, but verbally abusing, emotionally abusing, sexually abusing. Abuse, it's a wicked, wicked word. It needs to have punishment brought upon the abusers. But children who are beaten, children who are struck in anger and not with any kind of love or commitment in the heart of the person who's doing it. And I'm sorry, that those things got carried away back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and part of the result is some of the generational things now. So, but I just thought, how many times did it say, yes, there is a place for physical punishment of people. And it's not punishing the righteous. It's punishing people who have clearly proven by the whole direction of their life, the wickedness of their life, the core that there is no moral core in their life. Okay.
All through the Bible, God punished people. You know, he wiped out whole cities for wicked people.
Well, Jesus pulled out a whip.
Including the families,
Right.
which is misunderstood today a lot too. So, okay, for next week, I'll put an announcement out. We'll take we'll finish these chapters up that we just sort of skipped over when I was doing this physical punishment rant, I guess, and we'll pick it up and finish it. I'll tell Frank what to teach. Okay, so all right. If you have any prayer requests or anything, let me know. I'll send out the revised thing with the video this afternoon and continue to pray for Rob and more. I don't know any details, but the good thing is hospice was taken care of. All she had to do when he died, she called hospice, and they were taking care of all the arrangements. That's a blessing. So, Father, thank you for this gathering today, that we can be together and we can just openly, transparently confess our faults before you and before each other and say that none of us have not done any of these foolish things. But thank you for your word that doesn't change. Thank you for showing us at least 100 symptoms of the fool in here, at least 100 clear indicators, descriptions of, and also in your word, the cure for it, the wisdom that comes in knowing Jesus Christ, having the Spirit of truth inside of us. Thank you, awesome Spirit inside of us, for helping us to know you and helping us to understand you. And Lord, thank you for searching our hearts as you do. Guide us this week that we could honor you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.